Hello, linguists, and welcome back to the Language Lounge.
Your cozy corner.
For language discovery.
I'm Eloise OLINARES.
I'm Gabrielle Perez.
And I'm Janell, Eunice, and it's good to see you guys again.
It's good to see you guys. And so today, for our discussion, we're going to talk about the social interactions theory. So, the social interactions theory is a theory that we have discussed in our TLLA subject. Now, I want to ask you guys what's the definition and how you understood the social interactions theory. So, Eunice, will you please take the stand?
Thank you, Ate. So, social interactionist theory is how learning occurs through interaction, where learners test hypotheses and adjust based on feedback. I remembered the interaction hypothesis researchers. I don't know if you remember that, guys, but Evelyn Hatch and Michael Long have argued that conversational interaction is an essential condition for language acquisition. So for me, social interactionist theory is like saying, hey, we learn best from vibing with others. It's all about how hanging out and talking to people helps us learn to speak and think. We pick up language skills by interacting with our friends, parents, and teachers. Like, the more we chat and connect, the better we get at talking. Because talking isn't just about words, it's about connecting. As we learn to speak, we also learn how to socialize and understand others.
All right. Thank you, Eunice, for that. Yeah, that's right. We do learn more when we interact with others. That's the whole gist of the social interactionist theory. So, Gab, aside from Eunice, can you tell us how you understood how you understood the social interactionist theory?
The social interactionist approach can also help explain how differences in the quantity and quality of language exposure affect a child's language development. The context that children are raised in can be very different, and the differences in language exposures across various contexts should be emphasized when considering how children acquire language. There are nuances in how we are raised by our parents, right? Some parents nowadays talk with their child in pure English, but in my case, I learned pure English at school because we talk in pure Tagalog inside our household. Ever since, so I'm better at speaking Tagalog than speaking English. But I'm not saying that we don't talk in English, but I mean, there are certain words only because as you all know naman na some Tagalog words don't have specific translation in English. So yeah, social interaction, especially inside the household, really affects language and language acquisition of a child.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's important. It really starts, from within the family. Language acquisition really starts from within the family. So, in my case, what I understood about that is how important social interactions are. How important caregivers are, how important, just interacting with one child to another child. And personally, that's very important, especially as someone who wants to go in the teaching field. So you need to know how to interact with your students for them to learn. So yeah, that's a very good recap of the theory and how we understood it. Now let's talk about the language acquisition in general. In terms of the social interactions theory, in terms of all the theories that we have learned during our subject TLLA, what was your initial thoughts of language acquisition before? Like, what did you think about it, and how does it differ now that we've went through a whole subject? What are the differences? What are the challenges that you have faced with learning these theories? So let's go first. Let's go with you again, Gab. Can you tell us, about your experiences in general, about what you've learned with understanding language acquisition?
Yeah, in my case, interactionist theory really challenged my views in language. Before taking this course, I really thought that language is really innate with us. It came from the voice of our mother we hear during her pregnancy and also stated by Noam Chomsky. But this theory was introduced to us, my views on language changed. I'm just like, oh, so language is really acquired from social interactions, just like in the case of Jeannie last time. We discussed that, diba? She was raised by animals in the forest, so the language she acquired is the animal language.
Yeah, I agree. It really does start, like what I said earlier, it really starts within the family. In my case, you know, I never really cared much for language acquisition because we're bilingual. Most of us Filipinos are bilingual. We speak both Tagalog and English, and some Filipinos speak three languages, which is very impressive. So, you know, it comes naturally to us, and I don't think about it that much. But, you know, now that with social interactions theory that I've heard it, you know, it's I realized that interaction does really have it plays such a big part in you know language acquisition. Like in my case, I was mostly surrounded by people who spoke English. My mom would speak English, my dad did, some of my family members did, even if it was broken English, because my parents wanted me to be bilingual. And you know, it because of that, because they spoke to me and I went to a school where children normally spoke English, because of that interaction, you know, I was able to speak English fluently. And realizing that now, it's that, you know, the social interaction theory has had a direct impact on my life. It's very, you know, inspiring at the same time, you know, to as I said, I want to be an educator someday. So, you know, it's very inspiring to be one day teaching children and you know, helping them acquire the language as well. So that's the experience for me. But what about you, Eunice? What's your whole take on this?
Well, it's the same for me. Like, I didn't really overthink how we acquire language even before. I just think it's normal. Like, it's normal that we had a language the moment we were born, and it's not. I think it's not really important before. That's what I think. But then after this subject where we learn how humans acquire language, I am shocked. Like, I didn't expect that there's a lot of theory on how language acquisition is possible, and I find it really fun to learn. Yeah.
Oh, it really is. It's fun to learn because I think personally the most enjoyable part of learning is learning about things that you don't know that you have been doing. And that's the gist of theories. That's very interesting. Thank you for both of your thoughts on well the social interactions theory and what you've thought before. Now, you know, we have learned a lot. There have been a plethora of theories, there have been a plethora of concepts. Which among these, you know, are relevant to the theory that we chose today, which is the social interactionist theory? You know, which theory do you think, you know, connects more or is more relevant to, you know, to social interactionist theory out of all the theories that we have learned? Let's start with you again, Eunice.
Okay, so as I said before, that social interaction theory is when we pick up language skills by interacting with others, right? And the ZPD thing, which is the zone of proximal development, where we learn with a help from people that has a greater knowledge than us. This personal experience of mine, I think cognitive theory applies to this. Well, let me tell you this. Let me tell you this story of mine and my friend. So, right, I go to a Christian church where I often need to interact a lot. Like, I honestly feel that I socialize more in church rather than in school. And I also go to the same church as Mom Isa, which is called Victory, but we go to different branches. I go to Katipunan and she attends the one in Santa Mesa ata. Anyways, I go to that church and I belong to a committee. So I always meet new people from different social statuses, different universities, well, mostly from Ateneo, UP, and students from Miriam. I meet people with different views, different level of knowledge, and different languages, because what do you call this? We often have foreign guests or attendees, and I noticed that despite me being very introvert and rarely converse, I always have a take home knowledge from them. Like, for example, there's this time where I don't know how to properly socialize in English. Um, I don't know, but I just don't feel very comfortable because we don't use English often in our home. But then after consistently talking to people there in that certain language, I now feel more confident in talking to others in English despite, well, I'm aware that I often use wrong grammar when I speak this language, but yeah, you got the point, right? And I also have a church mate where her family is a campus missionary, where it's when they go to different countries, universities, and spread the word of God there, and they sometimes stay there for a year or so. So before we met, they stayed in Thailand for 2 or 3 years. Ata. And she's a very fast learner, and she kind of picked up the Thai accent and learned the language with just her interacting to Thai people. She doesn't study there as because during those years she was enrolled to UP Open University, as far as I know. And yeah, I don't know, it amazes me so much that even without proper source of learning of that language, she still manages to learn and adapt their language in that kind of short time they spent there. Yeah, so cognitive theory also applies to this because if I remembered it right, cognitive theory is a study of mental processes, including how people perceive, think, remember, and learn. And that may be how my friend learned to grasp that language easily.
Okay, that's very interesting, and very impressive that your friend learned Thai in such a quick period, which is that's very impressive to me because Thai is very hard to learn. That's interesting, and yes, that's right. Cognitive theory, it's what's one of the theories that we have learned, and it does have a connection to the social interactionist theory. In my case, it's social cultural theory. I mean, aside from the fact that it's also led by Lev Vygotsky, I feel like this one stood out to me the most because it talks more about the cultural part. We Filipinos, we value culture, so much. And basically, we know that social cultural theory is, it focuses on social interactions through a cultural context. And, it's important to us. I remember that when I was younger, because I mostly, watched English shows, uh, when I went to my lola's house, my cousins would do mano. We all know what mano is. But then I didn't know how to do that. So my mom, who has been doing that, of course, most of her life, she would like, oh, magmano ka sa lola. So I would do that, and I think that's an example of um cultural perspectives with social with other people. In my case, my mom taught me how to do this certain thing that we only do in our culture, which is very interesting how these two connect. And I think this is also important to me, as a future educator, as to teach the culture, because recently I've been noticing that the future generations, they focus more on the western part of the west, the western shows, western education. They prefer that. So I think as a future educator, I should put some importance, to making sure that the culture is continued to be learned. So thank you. That's very interesting. How about you, Gab? What's your whole take on this?
Yeah, I think in my case, I think that social interactionist theory has a deep relation to behaviorist perspective by Jane Watson, B.F. Skinner, and Thorndike. We all know that behaviorist perspectives are based on the idea that humans learn by imitation, practicing, reinforcing, and forming habits, right? And of course, learning by imitating requires social interaction. What children hear, children say. I researched about Yuri Bronfenbrenner's bioecological theory. He suggests that an individual's development is influenced by a series of interconnected environmental systems ranging from the immediate surrounding, for example, the family, to broad societal structures, for example, in culture. So, example, in my case, I went to a debut party when I heard the children suddenly curse talaga. Then I was curious, how did he learn that word? Who taught that to him? Then I suddenly thought that he learned those words through what he learned inside, through what he heard and learned inside their household, and then imitating such bad words. In relation to social interactions theory, social interactions serve as a primary means through which children are exposed to and engage with this environment system. So yeah.
Okay, so thank you. That's that. I hope the child gets corrected, because yeah, that can be a bit concerning. But at the same time, it just shows how it really starts inside the family. Like I remember our group work back in for TLLA, how Maxine said that it really starts within the family, and you as a parent have such a big role in shaping this little person into who they will be in the future. So yeah, that's very interesting, the behaviors theory. Okay, so I think that's all that we need to be covered. I would like to thank you guys for your time and effort today. It really was interesting learning all of these with you, learning these theories with you, and now we finished the subject and we're going to go to our next step, which is the second year, which is very exciting. And I wish you guys the best on all of your endeavors. So, once again, this has been the Language Lounge.
The cozy corner.
For language discovery.
Thank you. Bye.